What's going on, everybody? Safar Sadek here. I'm hearing a lot of misinformation, and that's what I'm going to call it because that's what it is, on the internet about, the so-called great falling away, which is the name of this lesson, by the way. And the reason why I call this misinformation because you all are being taught this by European Christianity with their falsified breakdowns of prophecy and their incorrect interpretations of pretty much the entire Bible. And I mean, it's just a complete farce, man. These people do not know what they're talking about because the way they're breaking this stuff down, especially pertaining to this particular topic, they're trying to put themselves as the key people, and everything, all this stuff is supposed to be centered around them. Well, we're going to go into the scriptures as I always do, and I'm going to show you who this is really talking about. Hell, the thumbnail in and of itself should have told you that. But no, this is not talking about you so-called European Christians, and this ain't this gospel and all this stuff and these prophecies and everything. It's not about y'all. I mean, a lot of people say I hate to bust your bubble. I don't. I enjoy that shit. That's just a sadistic sense of humor I have. Nope, ain't y'all. So let's get in here and find out what's really going on. Let's look at 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3, and this is where they get that from. Let no man deceive you by any means. You see how that started out. But when you don't understand scripture and you don't, know the true gospel that's being propagated out here, this is exactly what you can expect to happen. For that day, which is Yeshua's second return, shall not come, except there come a falling away of Israelites first. So much for your damn pre-tribulation rapture. Because if that was the case, it should have already done happened. I done talked about this. And that man of sin, which is Satan, y'all looking for some antichrist, is Satan. Be revealed, the son of perdition. And that's 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3. So this so-called great falling away of the Israelites, that's already in the process of happening. Not the Christian church. That's total bullshit. I'm going to show you, and then I'm gonna chop this up a little bit with y'all. All right, let's move on. Now, here's one right here that's going to get a lot of y'all because you don't even understand this one. That's why you're being deceived. Matthew chapter 24, and I'm going to do verses 4 and 5. And y'all listen very careful to this. And Yeshua answered and said unto them, the Israelites, not the Christian church, take heed that no man deceive you. There we go again. At the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let the matter be established. Watch this. This is the part y'all are not understanding because of European Christianity's breakdowns of things, trying to put themselves in place of the Israelites. For many shall come in my name saying, I am Christian. Now let me stop right there. See, they put Christ right there. That's a deliberate mistranslation. It's Christian. And I know a lot of y'all probably, well, how do you get that? Well, how many religions on this planet, and there are many, identify with Christ? I'll give you 1 second to figure that out. All right, 1 second is over. None. Not damn religion on this damn planet, in any other realm, in hell, or wherever else, identify with Christ, except one. Except one. Just one. Well, which one is that one? Look at the word. Christian, Christianity, Catholicism. So now let's go back and read it with that understanding. Verse 5, Matthew 24. For many shall come in my name saying, I am Christian, of the Christian faith, of the Roman Catholic faith, and shall deceive many. You see that? So the purpose for Christianity, and I'm going to explain this to you all, See, when the Roman Empire began to fall after about 300 AD, somewhere around in that time frame, their military was no longer as effective as it was the centuries leading up to that point. Their military was like the Babylonian United States military has been up until this point today. Well, their military started to become ineffective. Their military dominance over the known world at that time started to deteriorate. People started rising up against that shit like they're pretty much doing now. History does repeat itself. Well, Rome said, we ain't going out like that. So they came up with an idea. They saw how that 300 years prior to them getting to that point around 300 something AD, they saw this black man, this young black man, come on the scene and flip the entire world upside down with the gospel that had never been preached like that before that time. I mean, he literally flipped the whole known world upside down. I mean, not in a physical sense, but spiritually. To the point to where the Romans that were in rulership then had to take this brother out. Of course, they used his own people to do it. They set all that up because his people weren't right. They ain't never been right historically. And the Romans do this. They studied that, so they used that to their advantage and had this brother taken out at 33 years old, looking like an old-ass man. His name was Yeshua HaMashiach. They had that brother taken out. And he started this movement after he had died that continued this work to the point to where it started causing the Roman Empire to deteriorate from within. And they couldn't do anything about it. And everything they did, it seemed to backfire on them. They couldn't push against this new movement militarily. It wasn't working. Hell, a lot of their soldiers and everything defected and wanted to jump on board with this movie. They was like, look, this is too powerful. This is something that ain't never happened before. Something like that that pretty much undermined the greatest military that had ever been on earth at that particular time. Nah, we got to do something about this. So around about 300 something AD, 300 years after all these events had kicked off, and their military might had diminished to the point where it was no longer effective, and they would get ready to completely fall as an empire. They hatched an idea. Fuck that. We ain't going down like that. This is the wound, the deadly wound that was healed, that's talked about in prophecy. So they hatched a plan. We're going to hijack this movement. Because it was still in effect. It wasn't as effective after all that time, but it was still effective. We're going to hijack this movement. We're going to whitewash all the key players, even their Messiah that came and started all this. We're going to whitewash all that and bury any history of it, that had anything that can relate this movement to the Israelites, and we're going to take it. We're going to repaint everything, including their Messiah. We're going to completely whitewash it, and we're going to add paganism to it. So around about 380 something AD, y'all go back and look at the exact date and everything. This new Roman emperor named Constantine held a high-level meeting known as the Council of Nicaea, and that's when they put this thing into full effect. They said no longer will Rome dominate the world with military might. We're going to dominate the world with religious might. The might that was started by that young man 300 years prior, that flipped the whole known world upside down and started a movement that we couldn't stop. So we're going to hijack it. We're going to take it. Their temple is destroyed. They've been dispersed. And what little of them left have pretty much all but been decimated. So we're going to carry the torch. We're going to pick up the torch and carry it. This was Esau's grand plan. And when they did that, they whitewashed all the history of everything and made it look like it was them the whole time. Now, that's some history for y'all's ass that a lot of y'all don't know. And I don't care if you're upset and offended by that, good. Because that means your ass listen. And if you don't, fuck you. I don't give a shit. All right, now that we've established that, let's keep it going. Let's look at Galatians chapter 1, verse 9. As we said before, so say I now again. If any man preach any other gospel, Catholicism, Christianity, unto you that ye have received, let him be accursed. Because back then, during those days, during the apostolic era, that Christianity and Catholicism, that shit didn't even exist at that time. This gospel, this movement that flipped the entire world upside down, this is what was being preached back then. That shit didn't come along till several hundred years later. So the Galatians, Paul wrote that letter to the Galatians with his foresight. Hey, a time is going to come when they're going to start preaching another gospel. It ain't this one. And anybody come to you with any other gospel claiming to be of Christ, let him be accursed. Paul put that out there not long before he went off the scene, because he knew what was coming. And what is it? The book of Acts 29 and 20, I think it is. He said, even as I leave off, grievous wolves will enter in among the fold and not spare the flock. Paul knew what was coming, because Paul had went to the third heaven when shown these things. So he knew what was coming. He knew there were other prophecies, concerning the Israelites that had to come to pass, them being scattered out in all these other countries to serve gods of wood and stone. Wood symbolizing Catholicism, Christianity, and all these different denominations, and stone signifying Islam. But it was the Christian doctrine that was going to do the most damage, because they were portraying the Hamashiach as an Edomite and not the Israelite that he really is. So I'm telling you, that's some psychological mind shit there. And they use artwork and all this other stuff that the Israelites were told in the commandments not to be involved in. Thou shalt not make to thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Exodus 20 and 4. So the Israelites were not allowed to paint pictures and this and that and the other, write words. Paint pictures, that's a good psychological tool over time to be able to deceive an entire generation. And that's exactly what's been done. All right, let's move on. Now watch this. Matthew 24:14. And now this is talking about the so-called end times and all the shit that was going to be going on during our time right now, and it is. Most of this stuff's already being fulfilled. There's still a few more things yet to be fulfilled. Babylon got to be taken out of the way for the rest of that stuff to be fulfilled. But this part right here is, we're seeing the final days of this right here. Matthew 24:14. And this gospel, that same gospel that Paul and them preached back then, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all, that's the entire world, for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. That's Matthew 24:14. That had never happened before. Paul and them didn't get to preach their gospel into the entire world. See, you got to understand, the 10 tribes were already over here in the Americas. They left out of the Middle East in about 721 BC and eventually made their way over here into the Americas and became the Toltecs, the Aztecs, the Mayans, and the Olmecs, and all these other, different people that they've been known to be called and everything. They became them. Hell, that was damn near a century. Well, it was about half a century before Hamashiach even came on the scene. That's a world away from the Middle East. So when Paul and Hamashiach finally did come on the scene, he said, go ye therefore and preach to all nations. Well, they never got to do it because they got cut off in 70 AD. Paul barely made it to Rome. The Mediterranean Sea, man, that motherfucker spans damn near 3,000 some miles from Spain to Israel. So it wasn't a damn small feat
called today. Paul had to do all that. And it took pretty much the latter part of his lifetime to do that, just to get this gospel to just reach Rome. The gospel never made it past there. It never made it past Europe. Because they started, decimating the Israelites and whitewashing the movement and replaced it. And so now the Roman Empire started their worldwide conquest and delivering a false gospel from that point in history all the way up until about 50, 60 years ago. Up and around New York, Philly, Jersey, around in that area, this gospel started being preached up in those areas with the Hebrew, what they call the Hebrew Israelite movement. This gospel started being preached. This gospel, reuniting Israel with our true heritage, our true power, our true culture, our true scriptures, our true identity. And then, it started getting around by radio, here and there and everything, but the true
Coverage, worldwide
coverage didn't take place until the advent of the internet and social media. Next thing you know, you had Israelites on almost every street corner in every place on this planet, especially where Israelites are. So when they're saying this gospel shall be preached into all the world, why? Because Israel, by then, the Israelites have been scattered throughout the entire world. Just like Mashiach said, ye are the salt of the earth. And so I always tell people, use this analogy. If you take a salt shaker and screw the lid off of it and pour all that shit in one area, the rest of the food is going to be bland, and you're going to have a lot of bitterness in that one area. But if you take that shit and you sprinkle it generously and evenly over the entire plate, then it has fulfilled its purpose. So that was one of the reasons why the Most High scattered the Israelites all over the world, other than us fucking up, which was a primary reason. But another reason why he did it was so that we could season the entire earth at this time. So as the advent of the internet kicked off social media, this gospel had now started reaching all Israelites all over the world. So when you read John 3:16, it said for a higher soul of the world that he gave his only begotten son. When the world is talking about the Israelites that scattered all over the world, nobody else. Yep, I know that's a punch in the gut, tough shit. You other nations, y'all got y'all's God. Y'all have y'all's prosperity. Y'all have y'all's kingdom. Y'all have y'all's rulership. This power and this gospel is exclusive to the Israelites. I know that's different than what the Roman Catholic Church and these other Christian denominations teach, but oh well. I'm going to show you why.
So let's move it on. John chapter 10, verse 8. Now, after having explained how this gospel didn't start being preached until the advent of the internet and social media. Now watch this, John 10 and 8. All gospels, doctrines that ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep, Israelite, did not hear them. That's John 10 and 8. So anything that started being preached after the disciples went off to the scene, up until the point to where they started coming back on the scene during the advent of the internet and social media, anything in between there is all bullshit. So that pretty much rules out Christianity in all its facets. That's all bullshit. All bullshit. See, I have to lay this foundation down first so I can show you what's going to cause this so-called great falling away. You got to have some kind of historical background first in its proper perspective and breakdown outside that of the European Christianity. That's the only way you're going to ever know this stuff, man. All right, let's switch gears. We're moving along. All right, this is what I'm getting ready to read y'all now is coming from John chapter 6. I'll give you the verses when I get down there because I'm not going all the way down there and coming back up. We'll find out when we get down there. But I'm in John chapter 6 right now. Verse 2. And a great multitude followed him because they saw his miracles, which he did on them that were diseased. Get that? That were diseased. Lame people walk, Blind people started to see. People that couldn't speak started speaking. People that had leprosy and other forms of all these ancient diseases and stuff, they were healed. And this is part of that movement that flipped the entire world, known world at that time, upside down. A man came on the scene, and not only was he preaching something revolutionary, but he was able to do stuff that the other religious orders of the day could not do. Just like during the time when Moses was contending with the magicians. It came a point to where them motherfuckers couldn't counterfeit what Moses was doing, because what he was doing was of the Most High, on high. That's why. That's what made this brother so effective in his teaching and pushing this gospel. Keep that in mind. Verse 35 in John 6. And Yeshua said unto them, I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that believeth on me shall never thirst. But I say unto you, verse 36, that ye also have seen me and believed not. And that's the primary cause of this great falling away today, because you believed another gospel. And that's why you don't believe the gospel that's being put out here nowadays. That's why you don't want nothing to do with it. A black man is the Hamashiach. That's what the scriptures say. But you don't want to hear that, because that's in total opposition to good times Jesus that's been preached to you people all your lives. Verse 41. The Jews or the Israelites then murmured at him, because he said, I am the bread which came down from heaven. That's y'all's problem. Y'all don't want to hear this gospel that was pushed back in the day by a young brother, masculine man, that didn't have nothing to do with women, but was about his father's business. See, that don't jive with the good times Jesus gospel that's been propagated in the earth for so long. Nah, y'all don't want to hear this. Verse 49, John 6. Your fathers did eat manna in the wilderness and are dead. This is the bread which cometh down from heaven, that a man may eat thereof and not die. See that? If you attach yourself to this gospel, to the real Hamashiach, you won't die. Not like everybody else. Verse 51. I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, and the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world. You see that? He was talking about his crucifixion. Verse 60. Now watch this. Many therefore of his disciples, when they had heard this, said, this is a hard saying. Who can hear it? Oh, y'all was listening when he opened your ears, and all of a sudden you can hear when you weren't able to hear before. Oh, y'all was listening when he opened them damn eyes up, and when he corrected them legs and your ass stood up and started walking and cleared your ass of all these other diseases and ailments and all this other shit. Y'all were listening then. But see, when the message got hard, when the message got real, y'all motherfuckers started backpedaling. It happened then, and it's happening now. Verse 61, John 6. When Hamashiach knew in himself that his disciples murmured at it, he said unto them, does this offend you? Yeah, a lot of y'all are offended at this gospel these days. Why? Because there's two gospels being preached, and one is pushing against the other one, and one has more sway and influence over the entire population than the other one does. And that's the problem right there, because broad is the way to destruction, but straight is the way that lead unto eternal life. That's what we got going on today. The battle between two gospels, one that's real and credible and one that's not. And unfortunately, 2/3 of our people, the Israelites, are on the side of the one that's not credible. That's the fucking problem. So now you see why there's going to be a great falling away. It's going to be 2/3 of the Israelites. The rest of you motherfuckers really don't matter, to be honest with you. Some of you do, but the majority of y'all don't matter. This is about Israel. It always has been. Israel is hope between two opinions. The false Catholic Christianity doctrine and gospel that's been propagated, this bullshit. And all of a sudden, this real gospel that has came back on the scene that everybody thought was done and over with. Y'all been like in a tennis match, looking back and forth. Oh, damn, well, you know, they got some good points over here, but they doing this over there and everything. That's what the problem is right there. The battle between the real gospel and this false shit. Verse 64, John chapter 6. But there are some of you that believe not, for Yeshua knew from the beginning who they were that believed not and who should betray him. He already knew, because he's the Alpha and the Omega. This was all scripted before your ass ever came into existence. He already knew who you were. Now watch this. John chapter 6, verse 66. 666. Watch this. From that time, many of his disciples went back to the false shit that the Pharisees and them were pumping out back then, and nowadays to the false Catholic Christian bullshit that's been propagated since then. From that time, many of his disciples went back and walked no more with him. So a great falling away happened back then, and because history repeats itself, it's happening now. So if you want to have an understanding, an alternative understanding of what 666 really understands, is you motherfuckers turning your back on this gospel in favor of the fake gospel that lets you do whatever you want to do primarily. Oh, we're going to get a little bit more into it. Now watch this. Hamashiach didn't do like most preachers would have done today and everything when they encounter something like this. And this is how I am. Verse 67. Then said Yeshua unto the 12, will ye also go away? That's John chapter 6, verses 2, verses 35 through 36, verse 41, verses 41 through 51, verses 60 through 61, verse 64, and verse 66 through 67. So now you have an understanding as to the battle that's being fought today. It's two gospels. That's what it is. One historically flipped the world upside down, and when it came back on the scene, it did the same thing. It had the same effect. Whereas the other shit is for the majority, for the masses, for those that Hamashiach knew from the beginning wasn't right and was gonna never be right. Y'all understand that? So which side are you on? Don't answer that. Your actions will dictate. All right, let's move on. I'm almost done. Now, we're going to change gears here a little bit. Once again, let's look at this. Mark chapter 8, verse 35. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it. But whosoever shall lose his life for my sake and the gospel's, the same shall be saved. And I'm going to read this next precept, and then we're going to chop it up a bit. Let's look at Matthew 16:26. For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? That's Matthew 16:26. So, and here we are. You got one gospel telling you that, you know, they're preaching the prosperity, you know, doctrine among many other damnable doctrines. And starting in the late 60s, early 70s, this thing started ramping up, this prosperity gospel, or doctrine rather. And it really appealed to the nigger bitches of Israel. You know, with the advent of public assistance, you know, they just had the civil rights movement. They was like, man, we got to make sure this don't never happen, nothing like this here again. So they got rid of the so-called black leaders, and they, you know, ushered in this public assistance. And, you know, they replaced the man in the home with daddy government and everything, and started preaching this prosperity doctrine. Even back then, yeah, excuse me, you had your Kenneth Copelands and your Jimmy Swaggarts and your Jimmy Carters and some of these other clowns that, you know, rolled this thing out. And then it started formatting over the next 40 to 50 years until what you see today. And so now, with this fake gospel that's been around for so long, this fake Christian Catholic gospel that's been around for so long, they're teaching people that they can be whatever they want to be, come to Christ however they want to come, and have any type of lifestyle, no matter what it is. They ain't got to regard the law, statutes, and commandments, because he nailed all that to the cross, so you ain't got to deal with it. And the woman can be over the man because the government gonna take care of her and this, that, and the other. Well, guess what? That was all by design, because they knew that when the 400 years were up, that our people were gonna begin to be getting delivered out of this hellhole. So that's where they came up with this, and it was prophesied that it was gonna happen about receiving a mark. See, the purpose for this was to get Israel, as many of the Israelites as possible, to commit treason against the Most High by taking this mark and swearing allegiance completely to Satan. But they used this hijacked gospel and all its many tenets to get you all to do this thing. So now, when they're telling you, okay, well, here we are in that point in history, we got a bad disease out there and everything, and the only way you're going to be able to, facilitate back into society safely without being a harm to anybody else, you got to roll up your sleeve and you got to take this snake oil serum. Well, 2/3 of y'all by default are already going to do it, because you've already been conditioned by this false gospel to do it. You want to continue your prosperity lifestyle. You don't want to give that up. And you don't want to be seen by everybody else as being a non-conformant or a renegade or anything like that. God forbid you God forbid you buck against popular opinion and stick out like a sore thumb. God forbid that. So they have over the centuries hatched the perfect plan to, now that we're here at this point, this is their response to this gospel, this once again being preached in the earth, flipping everything upside down. This is their response. Let's get as many of these niggas vaccinated as possible. We're going to use fear tactics. We're going to use the fear of loss, which is a salesman tactic, and everything. We're going to use coercion, like the Gestapo in Nazi Germany. We're going to use all manner of things. We're going to threaten these people's livelihoods and this, here, that, and the other, and they have been highly successful. Why? Only to those who Hamashiach knew were going to betray him. That's the people that are going along with this program. All right, let's move on. I'm almost done. Let's look at Zechariah chapter 13, verses 8 through 9. And it shall come to pass that in all the land, saith the Most High, 2 parts or 2/3 therein shall be cut off and die, but the third shall be left therein. And I will bring the third part through the fire, which is the tribulation of everything we're going through now, and it's really gonna ramp up here pretty soon. And will refine them as silver is refined, and will try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, and I will hear them. I will say, it is my people, and they shall say, Ahaya is my power. That's Zechariah chapter 13, verses 8 through 9. So that's where you get the 1/3 and the 2/3 from whenever you hear us, talk about that. This is where it comes from. 2/3 of y'all, 2 parts of y'all are going to be cut off and destroyed by rolling up your sleeve so that you can continue to operate and function in this fake society that has been created by these false gospels. Because y'all, that's all y'all know, and y'all love that. So that's for y'all. But the 1/3 that say, I'm not going to do it no matter what. Okay, but when this fire gets heated up, you will be tried in this fire. You can count on that. Not only here, but when we get delivered over into the wilderness, you're still going to be getting tried in that fire. It ain't going to stop until the Most High says it stops. All right? So I keep it straight with y'all. I'm going to show y'all how it's going to be. I'm not trying to hide nothing. I try to maintain 100% transparency over here. All right, let's look at these last 2, I think. Yeah, precepts, and then we're done. Let's look at John chapter 10, verse 16. Now, remember I said earlier that this primarily is for the Israelites. Well, there's a small contingency of heathens that are going to be numbered among us too. And here's your proof right here. Let's look at John chapter 10, 16. And other sheep I have, which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd. But it's going to be Israel first, then you heathens. That's going to be the order of things in this new kingdom. It ain't going to be nothing like what it is now. All right, now let's look at Isaiah 56, chapter 6 and 7, verse 6 and 7. Also the sons of the stranger that shall join themselves to Ahiah to serve him, and to love the name of Ahiah, to be his servants. Everyone that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it, and taking hold of my covenant, even them will I bring to my holy mountain, and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted upon mine altar. For mine house shall be called an house of prayer for all people. Ahiah, which gathereth the outcast of Israel, saith, Yet will I gather others to him, beside those that are gathered unto him. That's Isaiah chapter 56, verses 6 through 8. So for all you butthurt Israelites out there that are putting out all this hate speech and everything against these heathens because of what they did to Israel and everything, well, Israel deserved it, because Israel hard-headed. And that's just the truth of the matter. I don't have no indignation against these people, not even Esau. You see what I'm saying? Because, like I said, me being in this position that I'm in out here and everything, I see who's taking care of us out here. It ain't hardly Israel. And Israel got the means to do it. You damn right they do. These nigga bitches got all these damn food stamps and everything. They could be out here doing this stuff too. And it's a handful of them, but not as all of them should be doing it. But see, the heathen, they understand this. The Most High got it set up this way. And he ain't gonna turn his back on them. No, he ain't. I just showed you the proof right here. Because you got more of them resisting to do this than a lot of Israelites. Yes, you do. A lot of these Edomites ain't gonna do this. No, they're not. They're gonna fight to the bitter end. They're gonna send a hot lead down range. They ain't gonna go for this crap. And I take my hat off to every one of them that stand up against this mess. And that's just the reality of it. So there it is. There's your great falling away right there. All right, I'm done.